The Great Ruler Episode 135 Explanation. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. When the third sun tore apart the darkness and shone onto this land, the entire Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy was once again filled with vitality. However, the atmosphere in the academy today was somewhat different compared to how it usually was. Countless students were looking up at the most central peak of the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. They could vaguely see a slender and towering figure. Every single student already knew the news of Mu Chen leaving the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. They were looking at that youth basked in light with revere and admiration. He was the most dazzling figure in their Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy, seizing the glory for them in the Great Spiritual Academy tournament. Although it was natural for youths to be prideful towards Mu Chen, they felt admiration and respect from the depth of their hearts. At the headquarters of the Goddess Luo Association, the eyes of the tens of thousands of members were a little dim. Both Mu Chen and Luo Li were the pillars of their Goddess Luo Association, and with the two of them leaving, it was a huge blow to their association. However, they knew that right now, it was unsuitable for Mu Chen to stay in the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. He needed a higher stage, and the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy was too small for him. Although they felt sad, it was extremely understandable. On the training ground, Yi Qingling, Yu Shi, and Su Ling'er raised their heads. That brat Yu Shi's eyes were a little red when she heard that Mu Chen was about to leave. She couldn't stop herself from crying like a kitten. Up until now, she was sniffing her nose as tears gathered in her big eyes. Okay, stop crying. Yi Qingling gently rubbed her head as she smiled. Didn't Mu Chen say before his departure that you will be the pillar of the Goddess Luo Association in the future? This is the responsibility he gave you. You definitely can't disappoint him. Yu Shi rubbed her eyes as she heavily nodded her head. Rest assured, big sister Yi, I will definitely not let the Goddess Luo Association decline. In the next Great Spiritual Academy tournament, I will definitely seize the championship. Ambitious. Yi Qingling gently smiled and raised her head, looking at that figure and wished in her heart, Mu Chen, have a pleasant journey. Up on the peak, Mu Chen was looking down at the enormous Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. The countless gazes were caught in his eyes as sadness from the departure rose in his heart. Behind Mu Chen, Lingxi walked up. Her face was filled with a gentle smile as she stood before Mu Chen and lightly adjusted his clothes. You must take care of yourself when you leave the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. Mu Chen looked at the beautiful face close to him and felt a little touched. He extended his hand and embraced Lingxi's waist. He gave her a hug and soon let go. Big sister Lingxi, you must be careful as well. If you encounter any danger, then give up for the time being. I promise you that I will definitely rescue Mother. At that time, no matter how dangerous it will be, I will protect both you and Mother. Lingxi's figure stiffened for a brief moment from Mu Chen's actions, but when she heard Mu Chen's words, the corner of her eyes slightly turned red. She was touched as the emotion flowed in her eyes. She could feel the concern in Mu Chen's words. She lightly nodded her head and shifted her glance towards Nine Nether, who was by his side, and smiled. Nine Nether, I apologize for picking on you some time ago. I hope you will not take it to heart. Nine Nether was stunned as she apparently did not expect Lingxi to take the initiative and apologize to her. In this instant, she felt a little bewildered. The expression on her face wasn't too natural. She waved her hand as she said, no worries. In the future, I'd like to request you to take care of him. Lingxi spoke in a soft tone. Nine Nether nodded her head. My life and his are linked together. I will definitely not let anything happen to him. The Northern Sea Dragon and Dean Tai Kang had also flown over at this moment. They looked at Mu Chen and smiled. The teleportation spiritual array has already been set up. It will send you out of the Northern Heavens continent. If you need to go anywhere, search for big cities in other continents and use their teleportation spiritual array. Thank you, Senior Northern Sea and Dean. Mu Chen looked in the sky behind him. There was a colossal teleportation spiritual array. The Skylaw continent was exceptionally far, and even sovereign experts would need half a year of the rush journey to reach without using a teleportation spiritual array. Furthermore, it was on the basis that there weren't any obstructions. In between continents, they were either separated by vast oceans or dangers that even sovereign experts would fear. Some were also separated by spatial currents. Even sovereign experts would face danger to pass through it. It's almost time, get going. Mu Chen inhaled a deep breath. Although he was reluctant to part, he did not procrastinate as he spoke to Nine Nether. Nine Nether nodded her head, and the two of them appeared in the teleportation spiritual array. Mu Chen, don't throw the face of our Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy, no matter what. You'll always be considered the numero uno of our Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. Far away, there was a loud voice as he saw Shen Sangsheng and Li Xiantong standing on air as they looked at him. Mu Chen, if the opportunity arises for us to meet again, don't be dragged down by us. If that is the case, we will definitely not be polite to you. A smile surfaced on Li Xuantong's handsome face as he spoke. Mu Chen nodded his head towards the two. Big brother Mu, have a safe journey. Innumerable voices rang out from the headquarters of the Goddess Luo Association. Countless members of the association all stood up as they bowed towards the direction of Mu Chen. This was their respect for the founder of the Goddess Luo Association. At the sight of that, Mu Chen felt sour in his nose. However, he did not speak as he shifted his gaze towards the Northern Sea Dragon and lightly nodding his head. The Northern Sea Dragon sighed and nodded his head in response. He flicked his finger. A ray of spiritual energy shot into the teleportation spiritual array, and in an instant, a brilliant light shone from it as space started to violently distort. As his sight began to blur, Mu Chen knew that the teleportation would soon begin. He looked at the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy that was getting more fuzzier and softly said in his head, "Everyone, take care. We will meet again in the future." Whoosh! The intensity of the light in the teleportation spiritual array reached the limits as space distorted into a vortex. As the suction force grew stronger, Mu Chen and Nine Nether had turned into two streaks of light as they dived into the spatial vortex and disappeared. The teleportation spiritual array up in the sky gradually dimmed down. The violent spatial fluctuations also slowly calmed down and restored peace to the sky. However, the two figures had already disappeared. The entire Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy was in silence as the atmosphere became extremely gloomy. Looking at this sight, Dean Taikang helplessly sighed. In the past, when other famous students left, there wasn't one situation that caused the entire academy to be so gloomy. That kid's charisma was that great. Dean Taikang smiled as he shook his head. However, he did not boost the atmosphere intentionally as he knew that this gloominess would gradually fade as time passed. Perhaps, when another brilliant student appears in the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy, Mu Chen's influence will fade. However, is it possible to wait for someone that can surpass Mu Chen? As he thought about it, Dean Taikang sighed in pity. But, along with feeling regret, there was also a trace of expectation in his heart. He wanted to know the height of this youth that walked out of their Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. Perhaps it will be as they expected when he returned to the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy once again. His strength might have already resounded throughout the great thousand world. Lingxi quietly stood on the peak as she looked at the location in which Mu Chen left for a long time without a word. Dean Taikang and the rest did not interrupt her as they quietly left. Lingxi stood for an entire day, until the night enveloped her, before she recovered. She looked at the vast Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. It was the same scenery, but for some reason, something was lacking and felt dull. She turned around, returned to the courtyard that she resided in and came before the tightly shut bamboo house. She pushed the door open and went in. In the tidy bamboo house, hung a portrait with a soft female silhouette that made others feel at ease in their hearts. She looked at the portrait as she smiled. "Aunt Jing, Mu Chen has already left. He's very outstanding, no wonder he is Aunt Jing's son. But, I will not be able to follow him. I will definitely find you, Aunt Jing. No matter who is he, I will definitely not let him off for stealing my memories." Lingxi clenched her fist as cold killing intent surged in her eyes. "Aunt Jing, I will definitely rescue you." Lingxi strode forth as she carefully stored the portrait and left the bamboo house. She looked at this place that she has resided in for a long time. Big sister Lingxi. Sana's shy voice resounded as she stood in the courtyard, looking at Lingxi with her eyes reddened. You are also leaving. Lingxi strode forth as she hugged Sana and smiled. Yeah, big sister Lingxi has some things to do. Sana, after I leave, you cannot stop your cultivation. Otherwise, I will punish you when I return. Sana hugged Lingxi tightly as she nodded. Big sister Lingxi, will you and big brother Mu Chen return in the future? Lingxi gently rested her pearly white chin on Sana's head as she answered, rest assured, we will all return. Sana no longer spoke as she obediently sank into Lingxi's embrace. Moonlight shone down as the white-dressed girl slightly raised her head. The moon shone a light curve on her face. It became the most gorgeous night scene in the entire Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. And from this night forth, students of the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy would realize that the beauty that was young yet holding an elder spot, Lingxi, had quietly left. She did not disturb anyone else, and when she left, only her back silhouette was still that gorgeous. This was a broad and endlessly stretched ocean, the end of it could not be seen. In the ocean, there were occasionally huge aquatic spiritual beasts leaping about, rolling waves at the same time. TSK. TSK. Up in the sky, space abruptly distorted as strong spatial ripples spread out, forming a spatial vortex. Two light figures flew from the spatial vortex after that and appeared in the sky of this ocean. The instant the two of them appeared, they exchanged looks as they swept their gazes out. They were stunned upon seeing the vast ocean. Where is this? Mu Chen was at a loss as he asked, scratching his head. Nine Nether was clearly more experienced compared to Mu Chen. She slowly retrieved a scroll and opened it. The scroll was filled with complicated patterns and, after looking at it, it seemed to be an incredibly huge map. She swept her gaze as she pointed on a region on the map, then she lightly tapped on it. Ripples fluctuated on the map as it expanded, making it more distinct. In the end, a light dot appeared in that region. Look, we are currently here. This is an ocean outside the Northern Heavens continent, and if we continue forth, we will be able to enter the Nanling continent. At that time, we can borrow their teleportation spiritual array to head for the other continent. Nine Nether smiled. Mu Chen looked at the map as his eyes were filled with shock. He could vaguely sense the pretty powerful spiritual energy ripples. This is a spiritual artifact. Mu Chen was startled as he spoke. Yeah, this is a spiritual diagram that is used in the Great Thousand World to record maps. Generally speaking, those that go out would have one prepared. So, naturally, I have one prepared as well. If we didn't have this spiritual diagram, it wouldn't be easy for us to reach the Skylore continent. Nine Nether lightly nodded her head. There's nothing to worry with Nine Nether around. Mu Chen flattered with an eye-narrowing smile. He was speaking the truth from the depths of his heart. If he was all alone, he might not even know what to do right now. How could he be as prepared as Nine Nether? Nine Nether glared at him. Then, how long will it take for us to reach the Skylore continent? Mu Chen inquired. We will at least have to pass through tens of continents to reach the Skylore continent by continuously travel through the teleportation spiritual array. Even if we traveled without any rest, we would still require at least 2 months to get to the Skylore continent. Nine Nether spoke indifferently. 2 months, Mu Chen couldn't stop the corner of his lips from twitching. Don't think about relaxing during these 2 months. Nine Nether looked at Mu Chen as her expression turned much more serious as she continued, Mu Chen, I believe you are aware that you have already left the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy, and the place that we are going to is not an ivory tower. The Great Thousand World speaks with strength, and without sufficient strength, no one will look at you, no matter where you go. Even the Great Haven Law domain, which I was from, is not peaceful. It was a place filled with internal conflicts. They are not like the small fights in the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. Although I will do my best to protect you there, I know that you do not want that. Hearing her words, Mu Chen lightly smiled. Rest assured, I have been well aware of this logic since long ago. The Great Haven Law domain was not the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy, which had others trying to assist him in his cultivation. If he couldn't climb up by himself, he would most likely be stepped on by others. Nine Nether lightly nodded her head as she continued, right now, although you have successfully broken through to the sovereign realm, you are barely a first-grade sovereign. Because I have yet to cultivate the sovereign celestial body. Mu Chen said calmly. In fact, he could cultivate a sovereign celestial body with his strength, but it would only be an ordinary one. Aside from the great solar undying body, he did not have any other cultivation techniques for a sovereign celestial body. Also, he didn't want to waste the precious sovereign spiritual liquid on an ordinary sovereign celestial body. He was aware that after he gathered the 2 remaining materials for the great solar undying body, he would require a very large amount of sovereign spiritual liquid. If he were to cultivate, he definitely didn't wish to walk an ordinary path. That is only one of the reasons. Nine Nether nodded her head as she continued, there is another reason why the sovereign realm is a dividing line in the path of cultivation, aside from the sovereign sea and sovereign celestial body. The spiritual energy of a sovereign expert possesses spirituality, and regarding quality, it far surpasses ordinary spiritual energy. Spirituality? Mu Chen lightly frowned his brows. The spiritual energy of many sovereign experts has a unique attribute. Some have an ice-cold spiritual energy, while some are violent and fiery. Because of these unique attributes that they possess, their might isn't ordinary. Mu Chen pondered as he vaguely recalled the helper from the demonic dragon palace back in the northern heavens continent, that old ancestor Wu Ling. His spiritual energy was dominant and he could create cold and pitch-black waves in an instant. Those waves were actually formed with his spiritual energy, so it was extraordinarily overbearing and no ordinary spiritual energy could be compared to it. Then, how should I give an attribute to my spiritual energy? Mu Chen spoke as he pondered. Do you still remember that your spiritual energy has once combined with my 9 nether flames? Back then, your spiritual energy was exceptionally powerful and, speaking from a certain angle, the 2 were just interlinked. However, it is tiny in comparison. Mu Chen was instantly enlightened. Directly speaking, the so-called attributes was the fusion of their spiritual energy with other things, evolving his own spiritual energy and making it stronger. Although it was easy to speak about it, it was tough to actually accomplish it. Since spiritual energy would not fuse with just any random material, the instant the spiritual energy rejected it, not only would it not evolve, there would also be a huge drawback and he would be harming himself instead. Then, what should I fuse it with? Mu Chen asked. The majority of the sovereign experts would choose to absorb the abnormal energy from places of extreme cold or heat and fuse that with their spiritual energy. It was the most straightforward and easiest method. However, there would also be a limit to how much it can increase the power of spiritual energy. You have once fused with the 9 nether flames, so your spiritual energy should be compatible to fire-attributed items. Furthermore, you have also trained in the lightning god's physique, so you should also be compatible with lightning attributes. 9 nether pondered as she continued, as for lightning attributes, it is impossible for you to fuse with any powerful lightning sources at your current state, so you should temporarily give up on the idea. As for flames, my undying flames should be a good choice for you. Mu Chen's eyes lit up. Not only was that a pretty good choice, it was just perfect. He was no longer as ignorant as he was in the past. He knew how powerful the undying flames were. The crucial point was that the undying flames also possessed profound characteristics. Undying. But again, it didn't mean that he wouldn't die if he possessed the undying flames. He would possess powerful regenerative power due to the undying flames. No matter how grave his injuries were, as long as it wasn't enough to erase his spirit, he would be able to gradually recover from his injuries. Possessing the undying flames, he would have the upper hand in a long battle. Mu Chen's eyes lit up as a thought flashed in his mind. He looked at 9 nether and bitterly smiled, but if we did that, you will also suffer some harm, right? Although 9 nether possessed the undying flames, it wasn't something that she had gotten so easily. She also had to exhaust a significant amount of energy and spirit to create the undying flames. If Mu Chen wanted his spiritual energy to evolve, the amount of undying flames he required would be incredibly tremendous. And to 9 nether, it was a huge burden. 9 nether did not comment on his speech as she stared at Mu Chen with her slender eyes. Although there will be some obstructions, it's nothing great. But From today on, we will travel during the day, and you will start fusing with the undying flames at night. My bottom line for you is to have your spiritual energy evolved before reaching the Skylore continent. Nine Nether did not give Mu Chen any chance to refuse, as she said with indifference. If you can't accomplish that, a dangerous arc rose on Nine Nether's rosy lips. Don't blame me for being impolite. She casually slapped her hand down, and the ocean beneath her ripped apart. The leaping spiritual beasts were instantly slaughtered with that palm of hers. Looking at the situation, Mu Chen couldn't help twitching the corner of his lips as he wiped the cold sweat on his forehead. He was well aware of Nine Nether's personality. If things really came to that point, she might really give him a beating. This big sister was too violent. Do you have any opinions? Nine Nether chuckled as she looked at Mu Chen. Although she was incredibly gorgeous, she made Mu Chen flow with cold sweat as he hastily shook his head. Good, let us go, then. Nine Nether nodded in satisfaction. We're going to fly across this ocean. Mu Chen was stunned as he quickly carried on. Why don't you return to your original form and I'll ride you as you fly over it? It will be so much faster. The instant when he spoke, he felt something amiss as Nine Nether, who stood before him, had her brows lifted. However, she still maintained a blossoming smile on her face. It was so much so that her smile was a little lovely as she leisurely strode forth with her face flushed red. Little brother Mu Chen, you really want to ride big sister? Mu Chen dryly smiled as he turned around and ran. Boom! But before he could run far, violent spiritual energy enveloped him as he saw a large wing ruthlessly slapping towards him. A booming sound rang out as he was sent into the ocean. Mu Chen came out of the ocean as a figure flit across the horizon with a lovable chuckle sounding out. You're not allowed to come out, you are to swim in the ocean. It's your training. Mu Chen felt grief and indignation. He clenched his teeth as he muttered, a wise man knows better than fight when odds are against him. He chose to endure it for the time being, and when he was stronger than her in the future, he would definitely press her down on his thighs and spank her bottom. Nine Nether, just you wait. The youth swam forth with all his effort as he roared in his heart. The journey towards the Skylore continent was a slow one. However, under the task given by Nine Nether, the dry and dull journey started to get painful. It wasn't an easy task, even for sovereign experts, to evolve their spiritual energy. Although Mu Chen had once come in contact with the Nine Nether flames in the past, compared to having his spiritual energy evolved with it was extremely tough. It was simply the comparison between a firefly and the large moon. Also, it wasn't the Nine Nether flames that he was trying to merge with right now, it was the Undying flames that was several times more powerful. Nine Nether's training technique was straightforward, and at the same time, overbearing. She did not use any cheap trick. She had directly injected the tyrannical Undying flames into Mu Chen's body, finding the concealed sovereign sea in his body and poured them inside it. The Undying flames whistled in his sovereign sea as the blazing temperature instantly made Mu Chen's sovereign sea ignite. The sensation of his spiritual energy boiling gave Mu Chen an extreme pain. Even his sovereign sea showed signs of falling apart. However, every single time he reached his limit, Nine Nether would retract the Undying flames, and send it over again once Mu Chen's sovereign sea calmed down. Mu Chen only felt 2 words from the boiling of his spiritual energy. Living death. According to Nine Nether's words, the Undying flames were far more overbearing than the Nine Nether flames. If Mu Chen had directly fused with it right from the start, there would only be one outcome. His spiritual energy would be combusted by the Undying flames, and even his sovereign sea would be affected by it. Thus, he could only gradually get used to the Undying flames if he wanted to fuse with it. But how can he get used to it? That's simple, to burn his spiritual energy over and over again. With Nine Nether's logic, it was similar to getting trashed. The more you get trashed, the more you will get used to it. As Mu Chen's spiritual energy was continuously blazed by it, it would also gradually get used to the Undying flames, in which he can proceed to fuse it. Therefore, Mu Chen could only endure this torturing training method, since there was no other alternative. In the 10 days of their journey, Mu Chen and Nine Nether would rest whenever night came, and that was also Mu Chen's everyday nightmare. However, Mu Chen clenched his teeth as he endured the pain of the training. He knew that in this world, there wasn't any strength that came without a price. If he wanted to evolve his spiritual energy, he would have to pay the price for it. Furthermore, he could sense that every time they ended the training, Nine Nether's face would be slightly pale. After all, the undying flames were something that she had obtained through bitter cultivation. Such exhaustion was a little hard to bear as well, even if she had successfully evolved now. Facing this situation, if Mu Chen could not hold on, then he couldn't be considered as a man. Thus, the painful training continued. The painful training in the night did not affect the speed of their journey. In just a short of half a month's time, they had already passed through numerous vast continents. In the beginning, it was a newfound world for the youth that had stepped into the Great Thousand World. He got used to it very quickly and also placed the majority of his attention to cultivating. Aside from the hastened journey and cultivation, Mu Chen and Nine Nether would also seek information on the Void Great Solar Fruit and the Undying Divine Leaf. Those were the two crucial material for Mu Chen to cultivate the Great Solar Undying Body. However, there weren't any fruits in their search. The rarity of the two treasures far surpassed Mu Chen's imagination. After all, those two treasures would be great temptations to sovereign experts. Especially the Void Great Solar Fruit. The miraculous part was that the Void Great Solar Fruit would form a blazing sun in their sovereign sea. If one could obtain it and refine it into his sovereign sea, it would continuously shine on the spiritual energy in the sovereign sea, allowing the spiritual energy in his body to be fused with the energy of the sun, making it somewhat overbearing. Faced with such a unique treasure that could deepen their spiritual energy, which sovereign expert wouldn't treat it as a treasure. As for the Undying Divine Leaf, it was also scarce. It was said that this mysterious treasure was known as the substitute leaf. If one encountered a death situation, it could save their life. Which also meant that this was a second life. Naturally, the rumors were a little exaggerated. After all, if the attack was too terrifying to a certain extent, even the Undying Divine Leaf would be entirely wiped out. However, it was still a perfect defense to have such a treasure. After knowing how rare the two treasures were, Mu Chen knew how lucky it was for him to obtain the Nine Suns Divine Lingxi in the Great Spiritual Academy tournament. After all, such a treasure wasn't inferior to the other two treasures. Looks like it will take a long time for me to gather the two materials. The journey continued. In the blink of an eye, 1 month had already passed, and in this month, Mu Chen and Nine Nether had passed through dozens of continents. The distance of their journey was a little unexpected for Mu Chen. Some of the continents that they had passed through weren't big. It was so much so that it was even smaller than the Northern Heavens continent. However, there were also some vast continents, despite that. Even if it wasn't comparable to the Skylaw continent, the forces in those continents far surpassed the Northern Heavens continent. In just a short month's time, Mu Chen's experience had widened. He had even seen several other races of the Great Thousand World, bringing a whole new experience for him. Naturally, as his experience grew, his cultivation had also stepped onto the right track. Experiencing the innumerable times of burning, the spiritual energy in Mu Chen's sovereign sea also started to adapt to the undying flames. At the very least, there was much less pain. The small changes made Mu Chen feel relieved as he had finally obtained results from his torturous training. The moon hung high in the sky. On a mountain peak, Mu Chen was quietly seated on it. Looking at the distance, a majestic city could be seen from far away. The bright lights made it seem like daylight. The scale of this city wasn't small. Even at this time, there were streaks of light continuously piercing the night sky towards the city. This city was named Blazing City. The continent that Mu Chen and Nine Nether were currently located at was called the Blazing Continent. The majority of this continent was occupied by sand. Even the spiritual energy in this region was more blazed than some other places. In the city, there was the teleportation spiritual array that linked to the next continent. However, Mu Chen and Nine Nether did not enter the continent, since they chose to stay outside of it. Mu Chen's training tonight was extremely important. Mu Chen inhaled a deep breath as his gaze grew bright. He knew that his spiritual energy had reached a crucial point. Mu Chen turned his head as he looked at Nine Nether, who was by the bonfire, as he said in a light tone, "I plan to fuse with the undying flames this time." Nine Nether's hands, which were fiddling with the bonfire, paused as she abruptly raised her head. Her pupils were looking at Mu Chen in shock as she knitted her brows. "It's just 1 month, aren't you a little too hasty?" She originally intended to give Mu Chen 2 months' time to complete his spiritual energy cultivation. But, right now, Mu Chen had actually shortened it by a fold. It was a perilous thing for his spiritual energy to fuse with the undying flames. If the spiritual energy and undying flames lost control, none of them would be able to control it. "I'm not rushing, but I feel that it is almost time for it," Mu Chen said with a faint smile. It was a strange sensation, and if he didn't grasp the chance now, who knows when the next time would arrive. So, Mu Chen did not want to waste it. Nine Nether looked at Mu Chen. Her gaze was solemn, since Mu Chen was clearly not joking with her. She pondered in silence for a brief moment, before nodding her head. "Okay. It has been tough for you." Mu Chen smiled, feeling touched as he gradually shut his eyes. With a will of his mind, his consciousness had entered the Sovereign Sea. At this time, in the Sovereign Sea, the boundless spiritual energy was like an ocean as it whistled. But the spiritual energy in Mu Chen's Sovereign Sea was slightly different compared to a month ago. There was a faint purple mixed in his spiritual energy. The reason for this was naturally the undying flames that Nine Nether had used to ignite his spiritual energy for the past month. Rustle. A melodious sound abruptly came from above the Sovereign Sea. A light figure gradually appeared, and regarding its appearance, it was similar to Mu Chen. It was his spirit. After his Sovereign Sea had successfully been refined, Mu Chen's spirit had also been moved to his Sovereign Sea. The spirit sat above the ocean as he raised his head and muttered, "Let's begin." Nine Nether sat before Mu Chen on the mountain peak. Her face was replaced with solemnness. The bitter endurance of a month was for this step. She had spat out a mouthful of air as she extended her hand and lightly tapped the center of Mu Chen's brows. Purple flames suddenly surged from Nine Nether's fingers. Shortly after, the flames had turned into a flaming pillar and gushed into Mu Chen's body. Mu Chen's body jolted the moment the purple flames gushed into his body. He swiftly clenched his teeth and did not utter a single sound. In the Sovereign Sea, the head of Mu Chen's spirit was raised, filled with graveness as his eyes turned purple. This wasn't something he did himself. It was because there was an earth-shattering amount of purple flames above the Sovereign Sea as it swept over with a dreadful momentum. This time, the true might of the undying flames was unleashed. The earth-shattering amount of purple flames spread out in the space as it continuously swept down from above the Sovereign Sea with a terrifying momentum. A terrifyingly high temperature swept out in the Sovereign Sea. In that instant, even after Mu Chen had experienced the bitter torture for a month, his spiritual energy in his Sovereign Sea was gradually boiling at this moment. An indescribable heat surged, he felt as if it was burning. What overbearing undying flames! Mu Chen's gaze was grave as he watched this scene. Facing the tremendous momentum, he understood that Nine Nether had held back in that entire month of training. If Nine Nether had the intention to kill, his entire Sovereign Sea would definitely be burned to nothing. But no matter how overbearing you are, I will thoroughly fuse with you today. Sharpness gushed from Mu Chen's eyes as he inhaled and his hand seals changed. Boom! Torrential waves swept out in the vast Sovereign Sea as it turned into waves that were myriad feet in height as they tried to engulf the purple flames. It truly was a spectacular scene. TSK. TSK. However, the majestic assault of his spiritual energy was evaporated by the purple flames at the instant of contact. It turned into a white mist that rose in the Sovereign Sea. Boom! When Mu Chen unleashed his attacks, the purple flames also started to show its might. Purple flames gathered as it formed into fire pillars that shot down, and looking at them, they were like shooting stars. Boom! Boom! The pillars of purple flames shot into the Sovereign Sea as they lifted torrential waves. TSK. Along with the descent of those purple flaming pillars, the entire Sovereign Sea turned into tidal waves as it rolled. Mu Chen could sense that the spiritual energy in his sovereign sea was actually being evaporated, bit by bit. Right now, the undying flames were not being held back. If Mu Chen wanted to fuse them with his own spiritual energy, he would have to truly defeat them. There wasn't any shortcut to this fusion. We'll see who can last longer. Mu Chen's expression was grave, but without any hesitation. He waved his hand while showing a cold gaze, lifting myriads of waves in his sovereign sea. The boundless spiritual energy was like a loop of water as it enveloped the purple flames. The two energies brazenly came into contact. TSK. TSK. There weren't any violent impacts from the contact. The instant his spiritual energy mixed with the purple flames, it would immediately evaporate. But even so, Mu Chen still maintained a calm expression as he controlled his spiritual energy and endlessly shot it forth. The spiritual energy was endlessly evaporating. The ocean level of his sovereign sea was being reduced in layers. Because of the high temperature, even the space above the sovereign sea was slightly distorted, as if it was about to be destroyed. On the mountain peak, Mu Chen's body was flushed red, with his upper clothes already being reduced to dust. His expression was twisted and had clearly shown the intense pain that he was suffering. The sweat that came from him had also evaporated in an instant. Cracks also appeared on the ground that Mu Chen sat on, and it was expanding at a rapid speed. Nine Nether pointed at Mu Chen's brow as she looked at him, whose entire body was red in color. She couldn't help clenching her teeth as at this point in time. There wasn't much she could do. Mu Chen could only rely on himself to fuse with the undying flames. Mu Chen, you can do it. Nine Nether clenched her teeth as she muttered in her heart. Within the sovereign sea, a dreadfully high temperature spread out. The space in this region looked as if it was very slow. The rolling sea was being continuously torn apart as vast spiritual energy constantly evaporated. As the spiritual energy in his body evaporated, Mu Chen felt a vague weakness surging up. The surface of his spirit was also fluctuating with ripples as his consciousness started to turn fuzzy. However, the undying flame was too overbearing. They were not only burning his spiritual energy, they even started to erode his spirit. The instant his spirit was engulfed, the entire sovereign sea would also turn to nothing from the fire. And at that time, not only would Mu Chen fail his fusion, he might even be killed by the blazing flames. If he wanted to fuse with such an overbearing matter, he would naturally have to pay an unimaginably dangerous price as well. Mu Chen's consciousness gradually turned fuzzy, but he still kept his consciousness clear, because he knew that if his consciousness was devoured, he would have to pay the price of annihilation. It was a price that he couldn't afford. He had already given his promise to that girl, so he couldn't afford to stop here. Time gradually flowed, and in the sovereign sea, space was also being distorted by the high temperature. The mist was everywhere in sight, clouding his vision. In the boiling sovereign sea, Mu Chen's spirit quietly sat there. Compared to before, his spirit had dimmed down a lot, but he still kept his eyes shut. He could no longer sense any disturbances outside, but in the depths of his spirit there was still a strand of consciousness. That strand of consciousness was similar to a lightweight boat in the torrential ocean, swaying along with the waves. It seemed like it could capsize at any moment, but it did not fall. Facing the overbearing temperature of the undying flames, Mu Chen had no ways to counterattack and could only guard himself. His only advantage was his well-trained will that refused to go down so easily. He knew that victory belonged to whoever could last longer. The concept of time had already been unknowingly forgotten by Mu Chen. He only relied on that strand of consciousness to recall a long time, as if 100 years had passed. In that long time, even Mu Chen's consciousness had started to fade and was gradually lost, unable to stay sober anymore. What am I doing? Was I cultivating? I failed. I feel like falling asleep like this. Indistinct ripples would occasionally come from his consciousness. In the darkness, Mu Chen's remaining consciousness was unknowingly being quietly devoured. Nine Nether stood on the peak as she looked down with a nervous gaze. The mountain had already turned scarlet red, the grass and trees had already been reduced to dust, and the source of that destruction was Mu Chen, who was seating on the peak of the mountain. She could see the pain on Mu Chen's face had already disappeared, replaced with bewilderment. That bewilderment did not let her felt relieved. Instead, dense worry surged in her eyes. She knew that if Mu Chen could not regain his conscious by himself, he would be submerged in that bewildering world of consciousness and would no longer be able to find a way for himself to return. Nine Nether clenched her teeth as she lightly raised her hand, but soon placed it down. In this short period of a day, there were several times when she wanted to interfere. But if that happened, it would cause grave injuries for Mu Chen. Mu Chen, you have promised her before that you will become a supreme expert. Nine Nether shut her eyes as she muttered in her heart. In the fuzzy consciousness, tiny ripples suddenly fluctuated, and in the depth of them, it was as if a soft voice was resounding. It was distant, but also enlightening at the same time. I have promised her that I will become a supreme expert. How can I let myself stop here? Wake up. Following those two words, fluctuations rippled from the depths of his heart. That strand of conscious abruptly surged as it spread out and occupied his heart. The bewilderment from before had completely disappeared. On the sovereign sea, there was the spirit that had shrunk in size by roughly tenfold. The spirit jolted as his tightly shut eyes slowly opened up. He was focusing on the sovereign sea that was filled with dense purple mist. He slowly stood up and lightly waved his sleeve. In an instant, a gale blew away the purple mist. The mist faded and what appeared was the clear and vast ocean. His current sovereign sea was lustering with purple as purple flames lightly swayed in the sovereign sea. The sea, which was initially boiling, had long calmed down. Torrential purple flames hid below the sea. Mu Chen's spirit was quietly looking at the sovereign sea as a faint smear of a smile appeared on his face. Did I succeed? He slowly spread his arms out as boundless spiritual energy poured from beneath his feet. The size of his spirit, which had shrunk down, instantly recovered. Furthermore, there were strands of purple light circulating on the surface of his body, and purple flames surging in his eyes. Compared to before, his spirit was even more refined. Mu Chen extended his hand out as torrential purple spiritual energy swept from his sovereign sea and gathered on his palm. Vaguely, it turned into a strand of purple flames, with incredible power being emitted from it. Mu Chen stared at that strand of purple flames as an arc rose on the corner of his lips. He could sense that although there wasn't any apparent increase in the spiritual energy, the might had increased by several times. Because, at this moment, he had successfully fused the undying flames. This episode ends here. Thanks you for watching.